What are your thoughts for this game?
So my initial thoughts without kind of seeing the number once we knew this matchup was set, that was I wanted to bet the Chargers. I mean, you have Jim Harbaugh against D'Amico Ryans. I give the edge to Jim Harbaugh. Justin Herbert against this version of CJ Stroud from what we saw this season. Definitely give the edge to Herbert. And then I also would really like Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter, who was over at
Mhm.
Michigan on last year's national title team with Harbaugh. And just the way he's calling the defense this year in his first year, calling as a coordinator in the NFL against Bobby Slowick, who's the Texans OC, who's greatly struggled this year. And I've talked about in a few videos how the not a huge Texans guy because the offense is just so predictable and it leads to a lot of second and longs, third and longs, which makes it impossible with Stroud, especially since they've been down Steph Diggs for most of the season. He's out for the year. Now they're out without Tank Dell and Nico Collins missed time. So in terms of who I think is going to win, advance, I do like the Chargers here. The problem is you see that point spread at Chargers -3, and that's just a hard number to take on the road in the playoffs. That's basically saying the Chargers are 5 points better than the Texans if you're giving the Texans 2 points for playoff home field. And there would be no scenario ever where if these two teams played on a neutral field, I'd be laying 5 points with the Chargers. So in terms of the side, it's kind of an easy pass for me because I want to bet the Charger, but the price doesn't get me there at all. It actually probably would get me to a value play on the Texans, but I want no part of the Texans. So pretty easy for me to pass this. Maybe something to bet live. In terms of total, you see it down there at 42.5. It opened 44.5. So it has gone through the key number 44. I think there's an indication that this can be a lower scoring game, which is another reason to avoid the Chargers because I don't want to be laying 3 points in a game where points might be at a premium. So, like LA here, because I'm not high on Houston at all, but I don't feel comfortable laying the field goals. I think the market has caught up to both teams and maybe even overcorrected on potentially both teams. So, price doesn't get me there. If anything, if you want some kind of bet, maybe first half under at 21.5, make sure, or maybe under 20 is fine, or 21 is fine. But yeah, nothing really too much in this game. I would be interested in maybe the Chargers next week if they do win, and maybe betting them against the spread against the Chiefs. So hoping the Chargers win just to set up a really good divisional matchup against Kansas City, who'll be fresh off a bye.
For sure. All right, let's move on to the next game on Super Good Wild Card Weekend. The Steelers taking on the Ravens. This is their third matchup this season. The Steelers and the Ravens will play each other. This time, Baltimore is currently a 10-point favorite, and the total is 43.5. These two teams have a pretty good history of playing close games, Nate. So, is there any value on Pittsburgh here?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to see such a big number between these two teams. Whenever I think of a Steelers Ravens matchup, since I could remember, it's usually like a spread that's of like 3 points, or it usually ends up being a close game. So I feel like
Yeah.
there could be value on the Steelers. You could definitely make a case for it. I really don't want any part of Pittsburgh in this game, even
Okay.
catching 10. These two teams played 3 weeks ago in Baltimore, so kind of we have a good comparable game of what the point spread should be and what the total should
Yeah.
be. But in that game, the Ravens were only a 7 point favorite. The total was 44.5, and the Steelers were without their best wide receiver, George Pickens. So I know
Hmm.
that the Ravens won that game 34-17. So I get why the point spread is a little bit higher, especially since the Steelers lost to the Chiefs and Bengals in kind of important games in terms of seeding, or they were still chasing the division. But they do get their best wide receiver back for this matchup. I know he was terrible against the Bengals on Saturday night, but he's still an important part to what this offense wants to do. So I don't know. It's one of those things where like if the Steelers were playing better, I'd be a little bit more confident in this. But if they were playing better, this line would probably be more like a touchdown. I was just really underwhelmed by the Steelers' game plan against the Bengals on Saturday night, where they were just running the ball on first down with very little success against a pretty bad defense in Cincinnati. And that was leading to second and longs and third and longs for Russell Wilson, and he wasn't able to do anything for that. And the Ravens defense, I know early in the season they were giving up a lot of yards in the passing game, but their secondary has really improved. They've made a lot of adjustments. One reason that I'd probably stay away from laying the points with the Ravens though is Zay Flowers. He got injured in week 18 on Saturday. Feel like that's a pretty significant loss if you're counting on the Ravens to win by margin. And I can see them holding him out for this game, so he's ready to go for bigger, more competitive games. down the line in the playoffs. This is, of course, a big game, but just more competitive games. I think the Ravens know that they could probably get away with no Zay Flowers and still have success in this matchup with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry running the ball. So hard game for me to bet on. I don't love laying points like this amount in a divisional game, but it would be
Hmm.
only Ravens for me. I want no part of the Steelers. If I did have to make a bet in this game, I would look into the under, either first half under or full game under, even though this total has come down quite a bit from some of the early numbers, which was 46.5, all the way down to 43.5.
All right, Nate. The last game of the AFC Wild Card round is the early game on Sunday with the Broncos taking on the Bills in Orchard Park. Another big point spread in this game with Buffalo laying a 9-point favorite right now. What are your thoughts on this game?
So my personal point spread for this game is Bills -9 in the numbers that I use. So not really a bet for me here. I do
Yep,
think the Broncos have had a lot of good fortune this season to be in this spot. They've caught a lot of teams at the right time in terms of injuries and just kind of where it's
for sure.
landed on the schedule. And I mean, there was that game after the bye week against the Colts where Jonathan Taylor drops the ball before going in the end zone, and if he doesn't, Colts are up double digits, probably end up winning that game. So the
Hmm.
Broncos are a team I really don't want any part of, even in this big underdog role. I don't really like the idea of Bo Nix, a rookie quarterback, going into a raucous environment in Buffalo. Buffalo was able to rest a lot of starters in Week 18, so they should be super fresh for this game, super focused to get a win, and then they would host a divisional game against hopefully the Ravens next week, because that would be a really fun game. And I think the winner of that game would end up making the Super Bowl from the AFC side. So it's a big spread. Obviously, I do like the Bills here to advance. If I had to bet it, it would be Bills laying the points, but not really in a rush to bet this game. Maybe see if this trickles down a little bit. Use them in a teaser if possible from 8.5 to 2.5. But yeah, nothing really betting wise here. But definitely looking forward to watching this game and seeing how Buffalo looks and for this game, and then how maybe we see them going forward, because I do think they can make a trip to New Orleans and possibly win the Super Bowl.